Hi, my name is Carol Lyles Shaw, and I will be teaching at the Minnesota Quilters Conference in 2019. Here's an overview of the workshops that I will be offering. I will be teaching 4 fun and fast-paced workshops. All of my workshops are suitable for confident beginners up to experienced quilters. In each workshop, we'll explore the principles of contemporary modern quilt design, and these workshops will be a great introduction to modern quilting for those traditional quilters out there. These workshops will help you answer that question, so what really makes a quilt modern? Lastly, all of my workshops include complete instructions and layouts for finishing your project at home. The first workshop I'll be teaching is the Fibonacci Quilt Workshop. And in this workshop, we will explore using Fibonacci math to make a set of large blocks, and we'll also make an improvisational quilt center block. This center block is optional because I will also make sure you have a piecing layout for this center block, or you can combine improvisational piecing with large pieces of fabric to make the center block. And don't worry about doing Fibonacci math. There is no math involved in this workshop. I've done all that for you. You can use almost any type of fabric palette or colorway to make this project. There are a couple of things I would like to point out. When you choose your fabrics, make sure you choose fabrics that show contrast and variety. Don't overmatch your fabrics because you don't want a boring modern quilt. And if you're not sure which fabrics to use, I suggest that you bring a few more choices than you think you will need. So for example, in this first block, which is a Fibonacci block, you see that I have used a nice, vibrant, modern print that's shown in the upper left corner. And I've combined it with 5 different near solids. Now, these fabrics have a bit of texture to them, but they basically read as solids. But they also have a little bit of value contrast in the fabric itself. For example, in the yellow fabric, there are light and slightly medium areas, which give some vibrancy to the quilt block. Now, in terms of don't overmatch, notice that I've thrown in an abstract, modern black and white print. Black and white prints can be a really fun addition to your selection of fabrics, so think about bringing 1 or 2 of those. Here's a different colorway and style of fabric used. As you can see, the large block is a fairly traditional print, although it is a little bit larger scale. And I've combined it with a set of solid prints. Of course, I could use grunge or some other textured solid or near solid fabric as well. But notice that I didn't overmatch the colors because I threw in this chartreuse looking block in the upper right-hand corner. It's a bit more vibrant than the colors in the print, but it really adds a bit of sparkle to this particular set of fabrics. In this third example, I've shown this one to you because notice that I've added a lovely, vibrant, and modern stripe fabric. And I suggest you keep the stripe fabric fairly low scale. That is, the stripes should be fairly close together. And I've cut it on the diagonal, which again adds a bit of interest. And notice I've added solids and a very vibrant print, which you can see in the upper left corner. So now let's talk about the next workshop, Parisian curves. In this particular workshop, you will learn how to cut and piece curved blocks like you see in this first sample with no templates and no pinning. And each block that you cut and piece will be unique. You'll be sewing strictly by machine, and I'll also show you multiple quilt layouts. Here's some more examples of the Parisian curve blocks. In these blocks, you'll notice that there are multiple layers of curves. And believe me, it's just as easy. And again, no templates, no pinning, and each block you make will be really, really unique. Now, also notice that I've used some very modern batiks in this particular quilt. And here's the quilt that those blocks go in. Now, notice also that the background fabric here is a very bold and bright yellow. It's also a batik, so it has some texture. And also notice that I've used some of the background fabric in the quilt blocks themselves. This makes the blocks kind of float and blend in and gives you a very, very abstract looking surface that looks really complex, but trust me, it's very easy to make these blocks. The important thing when you're choosing your fabrics is to make sure your background fabric has high contrast with your curved patch fabrics, that is the fabrics you're going to use in the blocks themselves. You want contrast in either color. So for example, I've used this yellow here. And although I've got sort of a medium yellow in a couple of the other blocks, still they really stand out next to the background fabric. You don't want your other fabrics to blend in too much with your background. Here's a very different example in terms of colors and fabrics. It's red, white, and blue. And I have used two prints in this quilt. The one here that you see and this white fabric actually has some red and blue stars on a white background. But what makes this quilt really interesting is that the background fabric is all cut from one blue ombre. And an ombre fabric is a fabric that goes from dark to medium to light, and then it repeats itself and goes from light to medium and back to dark again across the width of the fabric. Consider bringing an ombre to use in this project, but again, make sure that your other fabrics really show contrast. So I've used the red and these prints to really make the blocks stand out. So high contrast and variety are critical for this project. The next project is the Fractured Disappearing 9 patch. Now, I know some of you are familiar with fractured disappearing 9 patch techniques, but this technique is unique because we will cut and slice and even add inserted fabrics to make each of your blocks really, really unique. So it's improvisation, but with a bit of a plan, because I'll show you the ways that I suggest you cut and sew back together the pieces. This is really simple sewing, all straight lines. There are no Y seams or other tricky piecing. So a beginner can easily make this quilt. One option I suggest is that when you choose your fabrics, think about using your background fabric in the quilt blocks themselves. This makes those pieces float even more. And you can see that especially in this bottom right block. So I love putting the background fabric in the blocks. It makes them float, makes them look more intricate, and it's a lot of fun. Lastly, you'll notice I fussy cut one fabric in the group that I used because I wanted to have this flower motif in the center of the block. And I'll show you how to do that as well. The next workshop is the Mid-Century Modern Curve. Again, we'll be working with complex looking blocks that we achieve with very simple cutting and piecing. And again, these curves are achieved by cutting the fabric, but we will not be using templates or pinning or matching. They are bigger scale curves than we will use in the Parisian curves workshop, and we'll arrange them in a very, very different way. As you can see here, these blocks look extremely complex, like we did a lot of, intricate piecing, but trust me, it's all straight lines and they're a lot of fun. Like the other projects, it's really important that you choose fabrics that show good value contrast. And that means light, mediums, and darks. You want contrasting colors and even styles of fabric. Now, in this example, I've used ombres, and I even included a gray to black ombre in this project. And the white fabric is my background fabric. Again, it's important not to overmatch, and that gives you lots of variety. I think in this quilt, I used 3 ombres plus the black and gray ombre. Here's some student work, and you can see how students have taken very different approaches. In each case, they chose a range of fabrics. They made sure they had darks, mediums, and lights. And in this example on the right-hand side, you'll see this student chose to use a limited color palette. It's really only teal and this goldish brown. And then her background color is this pale tan color or parchment color. Now, she made it interesting because she has this wonderful print, and then she has 2 values of teal, a medium value teal and a light teal. And then she threw in a gray fabric, which you can find in the print, but it adds a bit of sparkle. Now, this gold brown that she included is not actually in the print. So it serves as a bit of a zinger. And she has a couple different versions of this brown print. So you can play with limited colors, or you can add a lot of different colors. So those are my 4 workshops. I hope that you decide to join me at the Minnesota Quilters Conference. If you've got questions, please feel free to use the Contact Me page on my website, carollylesshaw.com. And you can also find more information, and the registration information will be posted at the Minnesota Quilters Conference page. And here's the website for that. So thanks so much for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you in Minnesota. Bye-bye.